Hello once again, everyone. I see that more and more of you have joined today's session. My name is Domas. I'm responsible for sales at Simplanova, and together I'm not alone. I'm here with one of our senior developers, Simonas.
Hello, everyone. Nice to
Uh,
have you all here.
and Today we are going to have a topic regarding system application overview and its capabilities in Dynamics. Specifically Business Central, of course. And before we'll start all the sessions, let me introduce shortly the whole plan. So, of course, if there will be any questions during the session and so on, and if you would like to ask something, there's a Q&A part. And within the end of the session, we will have around 5, 10, 15 minutes. It depends on the amount of questions that we are going to receive from your side. So if something will pop up in your mind, don't hesitate to write the question. The recording itself will be available within a matter of most probably 1 week. So most probably either within the end of this week or in the beginning of next week, you will receive the recording as well. So if you will forget something, no worries, you will be able to have everything. So to begin with, let me do a quick introductions in general about Simplanova, who we are and what we do. I see already from the list of the attendees that some of you already know us, or we are even working together. So it's nice to see you. But getting back to the very beginning, who we are and what we do. Back in 2013, we started to solve a problem for the transition that Microsoft done when they introduced NAV 2013, the RTC client. Well, actually, we had RTC within NAV 2009, but the biggest challenge was to do those migrations from the classic versions to RTC at that point. And we decided that we should help partners and make the life them easier while doing those upgrades. So we decided that we are going to build a team of experts who would specialize in upgrades. And from that time till now, we have already more than 4 teams who are handling upgrades. We were able to build various tools that would allow us to work more efficiently in this way, because we want to grow faster and faster. We want to spread our team, but we see that it's not enough to bring all the good developers to help us with these upgrades. We need to automate the process in order to get let's say the advantage of the manual work. So we started investing in various tools such as report converter, data port converter. Currently, we have a tool that helps to deal with all the results after conversion with TXT to AL tool. I will introduce it shortly a little bit later. And of course, after the upgrade, usually there's a demand for another development task. So we do have a team of developers who can help you with all kinds of developments that are not related to upgrade. So it might be new functionalities, even new implementations, add-on development, and so on. So we can help you in all those cases and also provide consultancy services. And right now, because we still see a tendency that those upgrades from RTC or classic lines to AL is on demand quite heavily, we came up with an idea basically a couple of years ago. We started creating a tool which would help to deal with all the results that you will get from conversion with TXT to AL2. So right now I would like to introduce a set of packages which are called Simplanova's AL tools. So one of the main things what the Salt does, Salt automatically applies many of the fixes you would normally search for and apply manually, provides suggestions, implements useful developer functions, and gives you guidance throughout your project using a chatbot solution that we have created, and applied in-house, connecting to the full Simplanova's upgrade knowledge base, let's say, which we have gathered throughout past 10 years. Recently, we had the anniversary of Simplanova for 10 years. So yeah, so we took all the knowledge, put in one place, which is Simplanova's chatbot. So if you are working on the upgrade project, you can simply communicate with that chatbot. And if you will have any questions related to the upgrade, most probably you will find the right answer there. And also what Simplanova's AL tool does in general, it simply helps you to fix all the issues that you are going to get after TXT to AL tool. Because if you are taking your solution, if you are converting everything with the tool, most probably you will not be able to use the solution straight away directly. You will get a bunch of errors, warnings, and so on. The solution most probably will not compile properly, and you won't be able to run some of the functions on Business Central. So Salt simply applies many of those fixes automatically. As an example, one of the things which where Salt is really useful and saves a lot of time would be when it moves custom code to events. So how it works: event comments are extracted from the code unit delta files, and then all events are moved from AL files to dedicated event subscription code unit and divided by object type, might be table, page, code unit, event, and so on. And of course, where possible, code modifications are moved to the closest available event. Regarding triggers, all modifications are automatically moved to AL triggers. Where possible, TEMBLOB usage is refactored into using the dedicated TEMBLOB code unit together with all functions, which are used to manipulate data inside of the TEMBLOB record itself. Another one part which our tool handles, maybe not fully for 100%, but partially, regarding breaking changes, part of the objects and methods which have been split up, refactored, or renamed by Microsoft are automatically updated and fixed accordingly. Of course, it doesn't work maybe for 100%, so some of the manual adjustments still might be needed, but it covers quite a lot. Another one really great feature also, that it automatically converts option to enums, and it also solves some of the file management issues. So whenever a deprecated function from the file management code unit is used, it is refactored to work in AL, including usage of blob import instead of directly working with the files the original way. In general, while doing the statistics, because we are working with the tool internally for all the upgrades that we are doing ourselves, not those cases when the partners are using the tool of ours, we have estimated that in general it saves around 30% the whole upgrade hours that we would spend, while comparing if we would not use the tool itself. So currently, all those AL projects are quite significant while comparing with the transitions from Classic to RTC or from RTC to RTC. So on average, if we are taking those bigger objects, it saves around like 1,000 hours, might save around 1,000 hours if we are talking about those bigger upgrades, which consists 3,000-4,000 hours in total. Yeah, so, and on the other hand, it really helps with those heavily modified solutions. So it saves quite a lot of time, but words are words. My suggestions for the clients are all the time simply test how this tool works on your own solution. So if you are already working on an upgrade project or you are willing to do an upgrade project, there is a possibility to test Simplanova's AL tool. We could provide you the trial license, which would allow you to simply test the tool itself on your own solution and see how efficiently it can deal with the solution that you have and how much time approximately it might save. So yeah. And another one important thing from our side, as tomorrow a part of our team is going to Days of Knowledge in Denmark, in Odense. If you will be there, we will have a booth there, so it would be great to meet you in person. And if you would like to, we will for sure share more details regarding salts. We'll be able to show you exactly how it works because, well, today still it's not the main topic. And you will get a better view what to expect. So that would be it regarding the tool. If you will have any questions also regarding the tool itself within the end of session, I could try to answer all of them if that would be possible. If not, then of course I'll try to use a support from Simona's side. And yeah, I hope I'll have a chance to meet at least some of you in Denmark this week. And right now, let's continue with the main topic of the day, and I'll give a word to the main presenter of today. That would be Simonas. A word to you.
Thank you, Thomas. So, hello, everyone. My name is Simonas, and I'm one of the developers here at Simplanova with overall 5 years of experience with Dynamics NEV and Business Central. So most of my experience comes from working with upgrades to BC on-prem and cloud and development of various solutions on cloud and on-prem. And during various migrations to the cloud environment, quite often we have to find various alternatives to some functionalities that have been rendered obsolete. And sometimes we have to outright rework some solutions. So let's begin, first of all, with today's agenda. So one of the things that help us with reworking various solutions and achieving some goals perhaps is utilizing some sort of some features that are available within Business Central's system application. So in this webinar, we'll have a brief overview on what exactly can we do with the modules and features that the system application offers. And by no means will this be a complex tutorial, but more of a quick demonstration of some of the outstanding features within the system application. Because analyzing and looking over every single module in great detail would take too much time. So that would perhaps be room for another webinar if any of us wanted to perhaps have a deeper dive in one of the topics or modules that are available within the system application. So today we'll have an overview of some of these features and basics and what they offer, starting from the barcode encoder, camera media interaction, video and image, Sharepoint module, which we had a webinar on a while ago, the translations module, base64 and other encoding methods, business chart add-in, and some of the blob features. And after that, we'll have a short Q&A, and if anyone has any questions, we'll try to answer them. So let's start off with the overview of the system application. So I've mentioned this in my previous webinar on the Sharepoint module, so I'll repeat myself in a few moments here, but as of BC21, the system application has become an app which stores a number of different Business Central features, which we can utilize to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. These features are all built into the separate different modules that are neatly stored in the system app. And the source code of these modules is available on Microsoft's GitHub, and you can find it by searching on some sort of a search engine or just through this URL right here. And Microsoft is also open to various changes done by the community, as many of you know. So any developers can participate in the development and expansion of these various modules that are within the system application. So each module contains some documentation and perhaps with various code examples so that you can attempt to try and try out the functionality and perhaps even integrate it within your own solution. And what exactly is in the system application at the moment? Well, some of the listed modules may be familiar to you and perhaps have already been touched upon and explored at some time before. But those who have been working on moving their solution to cloud might have found cloud compatible .NET code units, for example, that help them refactor some library usage. Well, in the end, the full list is available in GitHub and along with the documentation and some examples. So let's begin with the barcode encoder. Let's have a look at what exactly this module has in store for us. So the barcode encoder is a module that can be split into two categories, let's say, one-dimensional and two-dimensional, 1D or 2D in short. The difference between them really is the display. 1D is the regular barcode that you can find in many stores and invoices and such, and 2D is something that's like a QR code. It's a two-dimensional barcode that goes on an X and Y axis. Back in the old NAV days, quite often a lot of us needed some sort of a add-in or a third-party solution or a .NET library, which is capable of generating barcodes or encoding some sort of a text into a barcode format, and then using the special font in a report, for example, to display the encoded text in a barcode format properly, or maybe using some sort of a .NET library to convert the encoded text into a barcode. So today, third-party solutions are no longer necessary unless you have something specific in mind that you want to do with your barcode encoder. So the one-dimensional encoder simply encodes the text into barcode format. The main function we'll be looking at is this function that was also provided by as an example in the Microsoft GitHub. Basically, this function, what it does is it takes a string, which is the barcode string property, and simply uses the barcode provider interface to, first of all, set up a provider, which is basically the algorithm that converts the barcode text to formatted to a converted barcode format. And basically then you can encode the converted text into a barcode and then return the the converted string, which later can be displayed as a barcode font. So currently the only single enum option right now for the provider is ID automation 1D, but I believe in the later future there might be more providers as well, since, well, there was been room left for this. And the encode font function is used with the desired symbology, so from code 39 to code 128 and such. So let's have a little look in the code exactly how it would look like. So right now, I have my Visual Studio Code open here. So right now I have a report and a page made for barcode testing. So let's begin with the report. So in this report, what I've made was a simple report where you get a list of items here, and then you basically get a number of every single item, and then you convert their ID, the number, into a barcode version and just print it out. So in the properties, I specifically noted the enum that should be code 128, and the other parameter, which is the barcode string right here, would be the number. And this would happen on every record. So another thing, though, is that the barcode number would still be a string, except it would be formatted. The other challenge would be to display it in as a barcode, and that requires a specific font. Now, unless your system has various fonts for barcodes installed, you might not have them. That's not really a problem, but Business Central has their own barcode fonts available within the system. So if you cannot set a barcode font on a text when you're editing the layout, you can always open up the RDLC file as in a text editor or in your Visual Studio Code environment. And all you have to do is just locate the text box that you want to edit and just add the font family property with the required font. In my case, would be ID Automation C128S. There are many other fonts for barcodes. I believe you may be able to look them up, but right now I will be using this one as an example. So let's take a look at how it would look like in action. So I'll try to run the reports. I have a report created here called barcodes. So I'll just select a few items perhaps. Let's just say I'll select this one, and let's add another item to the filter. And now let's preview it. And as you can see, the report is being generated right now. And these are the two items that I've selected, and these are the barcode versions of the items. Now I have my camera here with the barcode scanner open. So for example, if I wanted to scan one of the items, I would get this result, which is the 1900S. So the barcode can be scanned by all third-party and generic barcode scanners. So in this, you can basically say that the barcode has been successfully created and it's displayed properly. So another barcode type or category, I should say, would be the two-dimensional barcodes. So the two-dimensional barcodes not only extend horizontally, but also vertically, like a QR code, for an example. The 2D barcode generation works in a similar fashion, except since it's 2D, you cannot use it as a font to display the text as a barcode in a report layout. So you have to use an image provider to convert the encoded value into a 2D barcode. So in this instance, the streams and temp blobs are used to write and store the converted value, which you can see later displays as an image, downloaded or stored as a blob field in a report, for example. So in this scenario, what we have to use is the barcode encoder interface, and simply just using streams and a temp blob or any other blob where you can store the image. So really all it takes for us is to use initiate the barcode encoder by just simply assigning an enum to it, to what kind of barcode it is, which is Dynamics 2D, but there might be other providers later in the future. And then we basically assign a temp blob with the barcode encoder with the procedure of encode image. We add the input text that we want to convert, and we choose symbology. In this case, I chose QR code, which is a quite common one. And then we just use streams to save the barcode. So let's try to see this in action. Let's open up our Business Central client here, and I have another page here made for two-dimensional barcodes. So I already have a QR code here, but let's just update it a bit. So I'll just add, this is a new text, for example. Now I have an action here created in code 2D, which basically does the same which was displayed in this slide. It basically converts this text into a QR code. So I click here, the QR code is updated. And basically, if you would scan the QR code again, and I would scan it, and after scanning it, it basically says this is a new text. So the features available in the system application here, one of the features is the barcode encoder. And personally, this is something that can help out a lot of people, especially when they're developing reports with various QR codes and barcodes, since especially in cloud solutions, .NET libraries are quite limited, and if you're using a custom one, then this would be completely problematic. So that's one of the ways you can walk around the solution without having to perhaps depend on third-party solutions and such. So my only personal suggestion would be maybe to allow the one-dimensional barcodes to also be converted into a blob or generated as an image, but maybe we'll have that as a feature later. So yeah, so let's move on to another module, which is the camera and media interaction. So it's quite known by most people, but Business Central can, in fact, request access to use your webcam or tablets or phone's camera. So the camera module can allow the user to simply take pictures and save the image either to a stream, blob, or prompt the user to download it. So most of you may be more familiar with the module since it is used within the base application's customer page. When you select the customer picture, you can choose to either import or export the picture, or just take a picture of a customer. So if you're standing next to your customer, you can take out your phone and take a picture of them, unless they consent, of course. So the technical details of this camera module is rather simple. So looking into the code, I have another page created here, which is the camera test page. What I have here are a few actions here, and really this camera test is a list page that stores all the pictures that you take. So the only method that's needed for the user to get a prompt to take a picture and then save the image is basically using the code unit camera and using the function get picture. And before that, is advised to use the is available procedure just to check if there's a camera available within the device you're using. If it's not a desktop or a PC without a camera, well, we might have a problem. So, and the rest is really just me initiating the record and using streams to save the image, and then inserting the image into the record and then saving the record itself. And the other function would be basically downloading a picture, which is simply just creating a stream and then giving the file name and just downloading from a stream. So let's try to see how this works. So I'll open up the page, the camera, and we can see that I've already taken a few pictures before, but let's try again. So let's go to actions and take a picture. So the camera run function now turns on. Now let's see if this works. Currently, I'm getting an error because Zoom is using up my camera, but generally speaking, we would be able to take a picture right here, and basically, and then we can download the picture as well. And simple as that. We can store pictures as blobs or directly download them. I believe the solution would be quite useful when working with various, for example, shipping features and such, since quite often some solutions might demand the people who ship various packets and such would take a picture of their parcel once the shipping is done for confirmation. So moving on, we have another module called video. And speaking of taking pictures, this is something that I also had in mind. Now, sadly, my first impression was perhaps the ability to record your own video within the device's camera, just like you take a picture with the previous module, but that is not the case. And personally, I do not see a reason why someone would need to record videos in Business Central, but to each their own. The video module really is more of an ability to open a video player page and play an embedded video from either YouTube or any other source. So the module is also used by Business Central's base application and can in fact be accessed through the simple search. So let's have a look at the solution right here. So first of all, Business Central already has a page called Product Videos. And what it does is basically stores all the videos that you can register and save and within the product videos. And each of the videos can also have a category assigned to them. And you can also extend these categories because the category is in enum. You can use enum extensions as well. And you can save all the videos that you want. Now in this example, what I've done is I've simply added a new field to the item table, for example. And let's just access items. Now, what I've added is added a new YouTube video URL to the as a field to the item information. And basically, what you can do with this is you can save the URL anywhere you want, and you can use the video code unit to launch a video in a separate page. So for example, I made an action here called show video, and what it does, it takes the URL and just plays the video. So I just added a random IKEA video I found on YouTube to play, and basically I can play a video basically for a specific, for example, item or a specific case. So usually this is where some people might not find a specific use case for this one. In my personal opinion, I believe it would be great for video tutorials and maybe for newcomers and users getting accustomed to a solution. Various new solutions could have some video tutorials available on every single aspect, for example. So let's look at the code, shall we? So the code is rather simple. If I were to go to my page extension, I have a function here called show video, and all we have to do is basically declare the video code unit and play the video through this URL. It is simple as that. But if we went to the video code unit, we can find some more functionalities here. For example, one of the other functions that will be mainly used is the register, and basically we can register a video URL that will be available within the list when looking for product videos. So again, if we do not provide the video category property, it will be categorized as uncategorized. So that is pretty much for videos. Let's move on. So another one would be image. Now, quite often, I've encountered throughout history when I was upgrading, for example, working on reports, quite often, especially classic solutions, would have a company picture that is incredibly large. In the company information page would store a picture that is a few thousand pixels wide, a few thousand pixels basically high, and it would be extremely large image. And in the classic solution, the image would be automatically scaled within the report, and it would generate rather fast. But in role-tailored clients, RDL reports, that seems to be a complete opposite. And what happens is that the RDL reports, when they're generating, they seem to have issues scaling the image, thus slowing down the report generation. And sometimes the reports can slow down from a few second generation to like 10 minutes. So this is where the image module comes in. The image module provides an API for working with images in Business Central, and it basically allows the simple manipulation of images, such as cropping and resizing of images. So as I mentioned, the best example would be using it in reports and such, if we wanted to scale the image or crop it or zoom it in and such. So let's have a look at how we can use this module to our own benefit. So what I have here right now is another page, created image test. So let's access the image test page. And what we have here is basically a page where everything is temporarily stored in a table. So I have the image blob here. So let's just select a picture here. What I have here is Business Central, basically the logo. So I'll just upload it here. So now we have the Business Central logo. So let's play around with it. So we can either scale or crop an image. So let's just, for example, try to scale it. What if I wanted to upscale this to 100 to 1200 and let's just say 600 wide or height as far as I know. So I'll just use the scale image action here, and as you can see, it's pre-scaled a bit. You can also mess with its aspect ratio as well. Let's turn it into a square, for example. And basically, this is what you get is more of a square and a large image. So how this works is basically the image code unit, what it does, it has a few functions, and really it uses streams again for input and output. So all you have to do is basically create an in stream for your image and use the image code unit to get the image from the stream, and then use the resize function. And basically you add the scale X and scale Y. And then later on, basically you can create an outstream to save the image somewhere else or save on top, whatever it is that you desire. And once you do that, the image can be rescaled to your liking. Now, what else the module can do is also it can crop images. So for example, I wanted to crop maybe the little edge here of the logo. So for example, the X from and Y from, which is the beginning of the cropping, which would start from the top left corner. So let's just be with zeros. I'll just crop X with, for example, 600, and I'll crop this with 900. So if I'll click on crop image, the image should now basically be cropped to be to the closer to the corner. So you can use this almost as an alternative to zoom in, perhaps, if you know the metrics for that. And how this works is really similar to the scaling. Basically, it uses the crop function. It just takes a few more parameters, which is the starting position of X and Y and the height and width of the image. So for example, if we wanted to start from the middle, we would have to take the size of the image and divide it by half and add this to the X and Y. And as for the width, this is just the additional number, not the target coordinate, by the way. So that is it for images. Let's move on to SharePoint. Now, SharePoint is something I've touched upon in previous webinars. I won't delve too deep on this one, but basically SharePoint has two parts of the module, which is the authorization and the SharePoint module itself. The SharePoint authorization doesn't really store any data and is used as a functionality for authenticating in SharePoint REST API. But the SharePoint module itself provides the functions to navigate and save files to a SharePoint site and create folders and access lists. And there are some limitations, though. The SharePoint module isn't able to delete or move files. You can maybe copy them, but ultimately it is the same as creating a new file. And the authorization requirements are the client ID and the secret that can be set up in your Azure portal when establishing an application that can connect to the SharePoint site. And of course, the setup page has to store that data, which is the ID, the secret, and the URL of the SharePoint site. So let's look up on how the SharePoint connection works. So I have another page created here, SharePoint connector setup. So if you're interested, if you're interested in this module in greater detail, we have a guideline written on this one and another webinar on the SharePoint connector. So that would be explained in greater detail. But for example, if I wanted to get a list of all the documents, for example, here in this SharePoint site, right? I have a few folders here, a new file.txt. So I have an action here called get list. If I click here on get list, the list here updates. Now, this is just a temporary list that I use to display whatever it is that I've gotten from this SharePoint site. So for example, if I wanted to add an item, all I have to do is just have a file name to input. So let's just call it test file.txt, and let's add the contents of the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So if I'll use the create file function, it would basically create a file. And if I use get list to update the list, as you can see, test file has been created. And if I access my SharePoint site, I'll just have to refresh the page right here. I'll see the test file.txt. Now, if I'll open it, it'll say the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Now, how exactly the SharePoint connector works can be simple, but yet complex at the same time. So if I'll open up the SharePoint connector setup, I have two actions here. So the first one is getting the list. So primarily the SharePoint client is used to initialize the connection to the SharePoint URL. And basically all I have to do is get SharePoint authorization. And to get the authorization, I have to use the SharePoint auth code unit and use the create authorization code function and add the parameters that I have saved on my setup page. And further, I would have to get a list of all the SharePoint, basically lists. And what I do then is I refresh my temporary list by just deleting the records. And I filter out the documents from the SharePoint list to make sure I want to access the documents list, the files that I've stored. And basically all I have to do is just find them, get the document library root folder, which is basically the folder of all the root files, basically the documents. And then later on, I can get all the files by set a relative URL, which is the URL of the folder. You can actually save this URL and even reuse it in other times without having to go through all of this. And as for creating the file, I basically do the same thing. I initialize the Sharepoint client. I create a stream to write all the contents into a file. And basically all I do then is I look up the documents, and then I get the root folder URL and just use the function add file to folder. So you can analyze this code in greater detail after this webinar. I'll share the source code with you all after this webinar is done. You should get an email with the source code, the URL to the GitHub. So let's move on now. The other one is translation. So the translations module basically lets you to modify translations for user data. Now, quite often when we talk about translations, we see topics based on the captions and labels and such, something that can be coded. But the translation module actually gives the user the capability of translating data itself. For example, there is descriptions and names of various items and customers, for example. And the translations can be created for any record in any field. And you can access these translations through the translation code unit. And you can use this, for example, when generating a report. And if the report is based on some sort of a language, or for example, if it's meant for a specific customer from a specific country, you can actually get the translated versions of various sales lines to display them in their language instead of the, for example, the default language. So let's move on to the translation module. So what I have now is I've made a function for the item card. So right now the description here says Athens desk. So I have a function here made called translate description. So when I click on it, it opens up the page. Now the page here is the translation page that is within the module. And as you can see, I've added a new target translation, which is for the Lithuanian language. And basically it translates Athens desk to Athens Stalas. And I've added a function which within the sales order lines. So let's just find the sales orders. And if I were to open, for example, some sort of a record here, as you can see, I have two versions of those, Athens Desk and Athens Stalas. So for example, right now, my default language that I've set up here is US English. So if I were to, for example, use the function translate, which I've created to just translate the description into the language that is the setup in the settings, it basically translates to Athens Desk. And same goes for the other ones. Now, if I were to, for example, open up my settings and change the language to, again, Lithuanian, because that is what I've set up. And if I were to wait until this loads and open up the sales order, I can get down to the list and use the same action. And the action right there was just created for example purposes. This can be automated, and you can create an event subscriber that maybe automatically changes the description once the item ID is filled in. That's one of the suggestions. So there's a lot of room for various usages. So let's just go to sales orders, for example. Open up our sales order, and let's just use the same action again. Translate, and basically translates to the Lithuanian version. Now, how this works is quite simple. I have a action here in the item card called translate description. And simply all you have to do is use the translation code unit and use the action show. Basically, the function show, what it does is filters out all the translations to the specific ones that are for specific record, or specifically specific record, or even a table. And the other parameter takes the field number. So in this case would be description. And you can basically translate all of the values in any field that you'd like. And now in the sales order subform, I have the translate action here created. And I just basically get the item to see if the item exists. And if it does, all I do is just add the item record and the description number of field number to the parameters. and basically get retrieves the translated version of the description field in according to the language that you have set up. So you can use the change language function within the reports when you want to change the language to the report specific language. So this way translation can be used to translate not only captions and such, but data as well. Now, base64 convert is a rather simple one. I won't be delving too deep into this one, and cryptography as well. What it is used basically for is converting text to a base64 format so that you may store large XML documents or pictures and stuff and save a bit of space. Or you can also use to create authorization codes when sending HTTP requests. So let's just have a quick look on how it works. So I have another page created here called base64 test, and I can just add this is a testing text, for example. And now all I have to do is just convert to base64, and it basically converts to a base64 format, and I can convert it back from base64, and it will just return it to the way it was. Now, how it works is, again, is plain and simple. If I go to my page here, all I have to do is use base64 convert code unit and use the following actions: to base64 or from base64. Now, just note that there's more than these two functions with the same parameters. There's additional parameters for these functions. For example, the encoding, if you'd like to convert this to a specific encoding format, if it's important. And additionally, you can insert line breaks as well. There's a lot more, and I suggest you all read up on this in the GitHub. Now, moving on, and speaking of the encoding, we also have a cryptography management module. Cryptography management is a rather large module, and this is something we don't really have time to delve deep into, since it has more than 1 and 2 code units related to it. But the basics is that in cloud solutions, the encryption key is already set up automatically for you, but in on-prem, you can set up your own encryption key, and you can use the cryptography management code unit to encrypt any data that you want and decrypt it as well, as long as you have the key. And of course, the cryptography management also allows to create self-signed certificates and sign various other files as well. So for example, if I go to cryptography management test, I have a few fields here. So if I want to encrypt this text, for example, I have an action here called encrypt. And if I encrypt it, it basically encrypts it with the key in mind. And to decrypt it, we can use the same function, but we have to make sure that if we receive the encrypted text, we have to have the same key set up in our cryptography management setup. So if I click on decrypt, it will return this text as well from this encrypted text. Now, how it works is plain and simple again. All we have to do is use the cryptography management code unit to encrypt text or decrypt text. And really, it just takes the text to encrypt or to decrypt as a parameter, and it returns it simply as a encrypted text or a decrypted one. So lastly, we have 2 more left, business chart and blobs. So business charts were something that could be developed back in the role-tailored client solutions up to BC14 using generic charts, but that functionality was rendered obsolete. But the user control for business chart is still available, and even available in cloud solutions as well, and can be defined just like in the image here. And we can delve a bit into the code, and let's look at how the business chart can be made. All you have to do is define business chart in the business control and have code that basically updates the chart with data on each refresh and add whenever the add-in is ready. So the way the chart is filled is basically the business chart buffer is used as a temporary record and is initialized every time. And all you have to do is add axes and measures to each data point. So for example, right now we have the add measure balance. So the balance is the y-axis. And we just simply set up what data type it is and what kind of how will it be displayed. So in this case, we just decided it would be displayed as a column. And then we set up the x-axis, which would be the customer, and the data type of the axis would be string, because the customer IDs are code, so it's a string format. So what we do then is just loop through the customer, for example, loop through any data point we want to loop through, and then basically calculate the balance and add a column for each customer, and then set value by index, basically setting a value for each column. And basically the index is an integer that is assigned to every column. So every time you add a column, you have to increase the integer by 1, because another column would need to have another value added. So uh, yeah, so after that, you can update the chart buffer and then display the data. So another thing to point out, that you can also use data point clicked trigger to get the data from your selected point. And the selected point is a JSON object. And if you display it as a text, you can see what kind of properties it stores. And one of the properties is X value string. And what I simply did here is I got the value of the X value string here and just parsed it a bit to remove the quotation marks. And what it simply is the value of the column, which in our case would be the balance. So let's look up on the business chart. But this is something that can be quickly made and displayed in a certain page or role center without having to access Power BI or any other functionalities, for example. So right here, we have the customer IDs here, and we have the balances for each customer. And if I click on one, for example, it displays the message customer balance, and it's the balance with the customer, specifically actually the ID of the customer. So yeah, to change that, we would have to just change to Y value string, as far as I know. So moving on from charts, lastly, we have blobs. And blobs have been touched upon quite a lot. We even had a webinar before on file management and how to use blobs to create a blob storage solution and store them. And a lot of people have used 10 blobs quite often, but not a lot of people have tried using persistent blobs. Now, persistent blobs are a case where you wouldn't have to use it as often as a temp blob, mainly because a persistent blob is just used to store data for a prolonged period of time. And quite often people just don't need to store that for that long. Usually temp blobs are just used to save some sort of an image or whatever through a stream and prompt the user to download a file, for example. So persistent blobs really are like temp blobs, except they can store data for a prolonged period of time without being dependent on a session. So let's look at how the persistent blobs work. So I have a blob test page here, and I have two actions created here. So one is writes into persistent blob, the other is download. So all you have to do is define a persistent blob as a code unit here. And just like temp blobs, all you have to do is you have to create them. And when you create them, you get an integer as a return. Now that integer is as an identifier, it's like an ID. You have to remember this one whenever you want to access the blob again. And then you just use copy from stream. So in our case, we would be copying some data from a stream into the blob, and to which specifically integer do we want to save it. So since if we get like a 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, you just have to put in 6, and then you'll be saving data into the 6th blob. And then, of course, you have the download persistent blob function, which is basically it accesses the persistent blob based on whatever it is the integer we added, and it saves the data to an outstream. And then we just use blob export function as a way to download whatever is the contents. So let's look into the persistent blob. So I have the blob test page here created. So I'll just upload an image or a file, for example. For example, this Business Central PNG. So once I've imported the file, it basically says the current persistent blob integer is 4, and it saved the file name that I imported. So I'll just copy the file name just in case, and the int is 4. So now, if it was a temp blob, it would still be available within the page here. But all I have to do now is just quit this page, maybe even refresh the session, and naturally a temp blob would be erased, reset. So yeah, so now that I've refreshed it, let's access blob test again. And I'll just add the file name as well to make sure that I get the right format when I re-download it. Now, as far as I remember, the ID was 4, if I'm not wrong. So I can just click on download persistent blob. It downloads a picture for me. And if I open it, it's the same logo right here. So you can use persistent blobs to, for example, store some sort of data over a prolonged period of time, or maybe if there's an event subscriber that doesn't have a certain parameter, but you can set the parameter a few functions beforehand and just save it and then reuse it later when they reach the proper function, and just store them in some sort of a single instance code unit, for an example. So that's the whole point of temp blobs. And I suggest if you want to, you can also read up on the blob module as well, because they also have a few blob lists as a functionality as well to keep track of whatever it is that is saved and such. So right now we don't have much time, so that would be it for this presentation. Thank you all for attending, and I think we might have a bit of time for a few Q&A, for a little Q&A session and some questions to be answered.
Thank you, Simonas. And well, yeah, during the session, we already received a couple of them. So
yeah,
let's start.
Yeah, let's start. So one question is about the 1 and 2 dimensional barcodes. Is it working for on-prem version? Yeah, it is working ever since BC 21. So if you have the on-prem version of BC 21 or later, that would work as well. Everything's that's available on the cloud tenant should be available on the on-prem as well. Another question is the same question about images. So is it available on on-prem? So yes, it is available. As I mentioned, the system application modules are also available on on-prem. I don't know if all of them will be working, specifically the Sharepoint one and such, because they're more cloud related, but it's worth trying and looking into that. And I think they are available and they should be working. So yeah, another question was, will this webinar be shared with the participants or recording specifically? And yes, every webinar we record and we share with all the participants to have another look and see if there's anything they missed. And of course, so far the last question is, how long do persistent blobs last for? So that is actually a good question. I think we have to look into it. I'll get back to you later on, but I don't think they last for a specific period of time. I think they will last as long as the server is active. I think they would be reset whenever there's a restart and such. As long as everything's basically on, I think they'll last for quite a while, but I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that, so I'll get back to you on that later.
Okay, and let's give a few moments if there will be any additional questions. And in the meantime, I would like to suggest for all the participants, if you still remember the first part of the session where I introduced Simplanova's AL tools, that you do have a chance to test this one for the ongoing or upcoming upgrade of yours. So just contact sales at Simplanova directly or leave an inquiry on our website, and we'll get back in touch with you shortly while sharing with the license key with you, so you could test the tool itself. Or let's say if you are completely occupied with all other activities, just send us requests for a whole upgrade evaluation. So we will prepare you detailed analysis and evaluation for your solution, which could be like a map for you how to handle the upgrade. And at the same time, if you'll decide Simplanova's upgrade team could help to execute all project instead of you. Well, I would say maybe not instead of you, together with you, because in one way or another we would work together. And yeah, I would really love to know if anyone from the participants are willing to be in the Days of Knowledge this week in Denmark, Odense, if I pronounce the city name correctly. If yes, that would be lovely to meet you there. And I see, Simonas, that we do not have any additional questions. So in this case, I believe if some important topics or some questions will pop up later on, you do have all the contacts of ours. You can contact us directly, and we'll try to support as much as possible. And for now, then, thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for spending time with us. I hope that all the information that Simona shared with you was useful, and most probably we'll meet you in either within the end of summer or in September with another sessions with webinars.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, we're always open to suggestions for various topics. And if you'd like to, we can also have a deeper dive on whatever it is that I presented here. So thank you for attending.